All right, we'll call the meeting to order. It's 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, January 28th. This is a general meeting of the District 287 Board. My name is Regina Neville, and welcome everyone this evening. This meeting is live streamed on the District 287 YouTube channel. The meeting is also being recorded, and a link to the recording will be posted on the school board section of the district website. The public is invited to share their comments with the board. If you would like to share a comment, we ask that you please complete the virtual meeting request form for written input that is available on the 287 website in the school board section. Written comments received by 4:30 p.m. on the day of the board meeting will be read at the beginning of the meeting. I invite board members to please use the raise hand feature on Board Book Premier. You can also wave, and I will try to watch for the tiles to see if someone would like to address the board. But the raised hand feature makes a nice way to see who would like to speak and in the order in which they make their requests. For virtual meetings, all votes will be taken by roll call led by the clerk. And at this time, I'd like to invite board member Michelle Kuntz to please read the mission of Intermediate District 287.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The mission of Intermediate District 287 is to be the premier provider of innovative specialized services to ensure that each member district can meet the unique learning needs of its students.
Thank you so much. And at this time, we will have board member introductions. I'm going to invite Crystal Brackey to call each board member, at which time I'd like you to introduce yourself and the district that you represent. Crystal, welcome.
Andreessen. Here, Shannon Andreessen, Hopkins Public Schools.
And I am Crystal Brackey, representing Richfield Public Schools.
Casey.
And Casey, proudly representing St. Louis Park Public Schools.
Keene.
Hi, Andrea Keene, representing Wayzata Public Schools.
Dallas.
Hi, Ruthie Dallas, representing Brooklyn Center Community Schools.
Kuntz.
Hi, Michelle Kuntz, representing the Orono Schools.
Marty.
Good evening, Heidi Marty here, representing West Tonka Public Schools.
Mosqueda Jones.
Hi, Jackie Mosqueda Jones, representing Osseo 279.
Neville.
Hi, I'm Regina Neville, representing Edina Public Schools.
And Seidel.
Adam Seidel, representing Eden Prairie Schools.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. At this time, I'd like to welcome staff members who are joining us this evening. We have Tanya Allen, Ann Becker, Melissa Broding, Sean Garvey, Radius Guess, May Hawkins, Kim Helgeson, Rachel Hicks, Superintendent Sandy Lewandowski, Ben McGrath, Chad Maxa, Juanine Mgini, and Elizabeth Lodge Rogers. Are there any staff members I have accidentally missed? Thanks so much and welcome everyone. I'm going to walk through this evening's agenda. We have our approval of the consent agenda followed by share the success. We'll have a couple of items in our superintendent report introducing a dual lawsuit, which is an action item, followed by information about 2021 legislative priorities and an update on the District 287 learning plan. We do have a business services and labor relations report this evening with a presentation of the monthly financial report for approval by the board. This will be followed by board business, which includes policy review and revision, with a second presentation of amendments to Title IX policy, which is an action item this evening. We'll follow that with a chair report introducing an MSBA workshop entitled Hiring the Right Superintendent, information about the superintendent contract, and also a resolution regarding a return to hybrid board meetings. And we'll conclude the evening with an AMSD report and just basic district news. Are there any additions to the agenda? Hearing none, I move to accept the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Second, Ruthie Dallas.
seconded by Ruthie Dallas. And Crystal, would you please call the roll for accepting the agenda?
Andreessen.
Aye.
Brackey is an aye. Casey.
Aye.
Keen.
Yes.
Dallas.
Yes.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Marty.
Aye.
Mosqueda Jones.
Yes.
Neville.
Yes.
Sant.
Yes.
Seidel.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Juanita, are there any audience members who would like to address the board this evening?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. In that case, we'll move on for approval of the consent agenda. Are there any items anyone would like to review from the consent agenda for separate consideration? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So move, Andrea Keen.
Moved by Andrea Keen. Is there a second?
Second, Ruthie Dallas.
Seconded by Ruthie Dallas. Crystal, would you please call the roll for approval of the consent agenda?
Andreessen.
Aye.
Brackey is an aye. Casey.
Aye.
Keen.
Yes.
Dallas.
Yes.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Marty.
Aye.
Mosqueda Jones.
Aye.
Neville.
Aye.
Sant.
Yes.
Seidel.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. We're going to move to item 5 on the agenda, which is share the success and recognition. This is always one of the best parts of the agenda because there are always lots of good things happening in District 287. This evening, it is my pleasure to recognize Superintendent Sandy Lewandowski, who has been named the National Alliance on Mental Illness, also known as NAMI, Educator of the Year. So I'd like to invite let's give a shout out for Sandy, because this is at the heart of what we do in our district. So to see that recognition is extremely meaningful. I'd like to invite our communications director, Rachel Hicks, to share a few words about this particular recognition. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you. First, just congratulations to Sandy and to District 287. It's a pretty great honor for our district to have Sandy named the Educator of the Year by NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. This award recognizes an educator who helps children with mental illnesses to succeed in school and who includes families at the table. And I would just like to share a few words from Sue Abderholden, who is the Executive Director for NAMI in Minnesota. She says, Sandy has testified at the legislature for specialized funding to provide a mental health professional in the classroom. NAMI, Minnesota's Executive Director, Sue Abderholden, said, she led her district to use alternatives to school resource officers by developing strong, trusting relationships with students and their families, and by hiring staff who specialize in mental health, de-escalation, restorative justice, and safe physical interventions. In the pilot, arrests went from 65 to 12 in the first year, and now across all 4 of its school buildings, the district averages just 5 arrests per year. This data is from, I believe, a little over a year now. She goes on to say, through innovation and dedication, and because of her leadership, District 287 now provides a trauma-informed environment designed to meet the high mental health and academic needs of its students. And I'll just add, I think that we can all agree that efforts like student safety coaches and the therapeutic teaching model and our focus on childhood trauma and in particular race-related trauma, this is all part of this extraordinary legacy that Sandy will leave 287 with. And Sandy, we're very proud of you and very proud of this distinguished award. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It truly was great to be recognized by NAMI. I didn't know I had been nominated, so when I got an email saying I won it, I didn't have to worry about it very long whether I would get it or not. So And I also have a lot of respect for NAMI. And Sue, she is a fierce advocate for kids with mental illness, and anything we can do to help her move that forward is something that I'm very invested in. But I think it's important to know that everyone on this screen probably has helped in several ways to move our work forward, whether it be in supportive mental health or trauma-informed, or any of those kind of topics that Rachel mentioned. They're a result of collaborative kind of work, and that goes through the board and leaders and staff. So it's a great place to be, and I appreciate the award and being recognized. Thank you very much.
Well, congratulations, Sandy. Are there any questions or comments from board members?
Is there any monetary value to this award, or it's just a trophy, or what goes into that?
Well, I did get a plaque. I haven't gotten a check yet, Ruthie. So
Not yet.
I'm letting you know if it's just late coming.
It's a great picture in the money newsletter. So this is just a beautiful recognition that came through with a nice write-up.
Very nice.
Very nice.
All right. Well, Sandy, congratulations. This really does represent the heart of the work that happens at 287, is being an advocate for all of our students, and you do that extremely well. So thank you. We will move on to superintendent's report. The first item is information about a Juul lawsuit. This will be an action item. I'd like to invite our general counsel, Ann Becker, to introduce this item. Ann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. William Chinoff. He's an attorney with Franz Law Group, a firm representing 200 plus school districts in a lawsuit against Juul Labs related to its manufacturing and distribution of e-cigarettes. Tonight, the board will be asked to authorize the superintendent to sign a contingency fee agreement to join the lawsuit. Mr. Chinoff.
Thank you all very much for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is William Chinoff. I'm an attorney at the Franz Law Group out of California. Just wanted to provide you a little background of how we got to the position of filing lawsuits on behalf of school districts across the country against Juul. I myself, prior to joining the Franz Law Group, was an education law attorney for a majority of the school districts in Southern California. And the issue of vaping was an issue across the board for all my clients. And when I came to the Franz Law Group, I was provided with the opportunity to seek out how to deal best with this issue. And one way that we can make change and provide the opportunity to deal with these issues best is through litigation. And so what we're doing now is we have filed lawsuits. I myself represent over 200 school districts across the country in this case, against Juul, and also as well as Altria, who is the financial component to Juul. You may all know them as Marlboro. What we're seeking in this case is the fact of how they intentionally targeted their product to minors. They failed to advise minors of the harms of their product. And now we're dealt with the issue of how best deal with this on our campuses. And it's an issue of on campuses across the country. And it is not right for districts to have to come out of their budget to be able to deal with this issue appropriately. They should be the ones responsible for fixing the harm they've caused, and for you to be able to take the right steps to be able to deal with this. So in this case, our focus is really on deterrence, support, and education. So the way we deter the use of vaping on campus is by installing vape detectors into bathrooms. Smoke detectors do not work to detect the use of it, and vape detectors is the way to go. I've heard stories from family friends who have kids around that age that kids are not even going to the bathroom anymore in middle school and high school because the fear of going into the bathroom and being caught there or even being around the vape. And so with the vape detectors in place, that students will now know that if they're doing it there, they will be caught. So that for the districts that have already this, they have seen a decrease in use. While this product has been made in a way that it can be used anywhere, another way we can deter this is through giving districts the opportunity to get the financial support for further supervision to provide funding for staffing. And so the way our model is created is with all these things we're looking to put in place, that if all these steps are taken, that we should see a decrease. So we're on a 5 to 10 year financial model. And so one way we're doing it is by giving the districts the financing to be able to go and hire extra staff for supervision purposes, because with supervision we can help deter the use on campus as well. Also, the issue that comes along with this product is what we've learned already in this litigation is, and it's been going on already for a year and a half, is that one of these jewel pods actually contains 10 times the amount of nicotine than a cigarette. So it's highly, highly addictive, very harmful. And so what unfortunately comes with nicotine addiction is social and emotional issues. So what we're doing in this is also looking to get school districts the financial compensation to be able, if necessary, to hire additional counselors to deal with this issue on a 5 to 10 year model. And then I think one of the most important parts is funding for education. Because of how they marketed their product, what we've also learned already is that it's very hard for them to say that they weren't targeting minors. They were putting their products out on Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, all these different social media platforms that were very popular with children. But when they were doing the marketing, again, like I said, they weren't informing of the harm. And so now we have this gap on kids that know about the product but don't know the real harm of the product. And so, as we saw with DARE and other programs, key to help bring down the use is through education, and educating, as young as elementary school, because they will be facing this in middle school, is on the harms of vaping. And so we're gonna be getting the school districts that get involved in this funding to be able to put on these educational programs on their campuses, so we can help educate not only students but also parents on what to look out for. So that's what this case is about. This is a unique type of case. So this is not a class action where you'll have one district representing all the districts in the country. There's very specific legal factors that come into a class action. And so because this is the type of case that wouldn't qualify as a class action for school districts, and in my opinion, a class action is not best suited for this type of case, we do what's called a mass action. So every school district that's involved in this case will file their own complaint. That means that they will have a seat at the table. And what the federal court does in these types of scenarios, where there are now hundreds of cases filed against one defendant with the same facts and same legal issues, they go and they consolidate it into one courtroom. That's for judicial efficiency. And because if they were going to go around to do this would take, the next 30 years we would be in the courtroom. So what happens is your case would be filed in your local federal court, and then it will be transferred to the Northern District of California in the federal court there. That is where every school district's case is being handled. And so we go, and it's called a multi-district litigation. There, we're now litigating the case. We're going through the discovery process, and the judge, who's an amazing judge, his name is Judge Orrick, is taking this case very seriously. And to give you an update on what's happened, we've already passed the first obstacle in this litigation of moving forward. And so what happened at the end of last year is all the defendants brought motions to dismiss the school district's cases, claiming districts didn't have a right to bring these cases. They've suffered no harm, and they will suffer no harm. And the judge, in a 154-page opinion, said absolutely not, that the harm based on what we're alleging is real, and it's a very big issue. And he's taken this case very seriously. And this case is very similar to the tobacco litigation that happened around almost 30 years ago, which is still providing funding for schools and counties across the country. And that litigation took a long time. And so the judge in this case does not want to see that. He wants to see either a resolution through settlement or through a trial. And so he set the first trial for the beginning of 2022, which for federal trials is very quickly. So we're not looking at a long time path for this case. And so your district's involvement in this is going to be unlike normal litigation that some school districts are used to. There's going to be no depositions. There's not going to be massive document production or a lot of work by your staff to have to be involved. What ends up happening after your district agrees to join is a questionnaire will be sent to your general counsel and superintendent to fill out. It's around 40 questions, yes or no questions, and it will take your staff a couple hours to compile the information that we need. That is the entire staff time that will be involved in this, and so that's kind of what this case looks like. To answer one question that I always get from school boards regarding this case is the cost to be involved. There is no cost to be involved in this litigation. We work on what's called a contingency fee. So unless your district recovers something financially, we are not compensated. And normally our compensation in these types of cases is 40% of the recovery, but we've cut our compensation in half to 20%, and then after a certain period of time it moves to 25%, but it will never exceed 25%. But again, if there is no financial recovery, you will not be paying a dime. So there is no financial harm to be involved. And then the other part that I want to make sure you're aware of is while there is 200 plus school districts involved in this case already, there is not one school district from Minnesota. So you would be, and I am in discussions with multiple school districts right now who plan on getting involved this month or next month, but you would be the first district to get involved, and hopefully all the districts you represent would then get involved as well. But this is something important. Whether this brings money to your district or not, I think the most important part is this is sending a message to the communities that you represent that this is not acceptable what happened, and that through this litigation there will be change. Because not only are we seeking financial compensation, but we're seeking what's called injunctions. So those are court orders requiring change. One of those changes will be the big part of this product was what attracted children to it, and that is through their flavored pods. Right now, under the prior presidential administration, there was discussions about banning flavored pods. But when it came to the point of actually putting something to be done of there being a ban, it never happened. But this company voluntarily took that product off the market. There's been counties, there's been cities that have gone forward and actually banned the product. But I can tell you that this company, based on their actions, are showing that they intend to bring it back, because just a few months ago, they started filing lawsuits against counties in California that banned it, saying it was unconstitutional. So based on that type of action, you don't sue counties saying something's unconstitutional if you don't plan on bringing it back. So what we're seeking in this case is an order from the court saying that they cannot bring back those flavored pods, because even though it was very profitable for them, the harm to society outweighs the profit to the company. And that's what this case also will be seeking. Another part to this case is about their marketing practices. What came out of the tobacco litigation was black and white rules on what those companies can and cannot do regarding their marketing. And that we're dealing with the same exact issue again, which is the tobacco companies intentionally marketing their products to minors. We want to make sure that those same rules apply to these companies, because this what they've created another problem again. So not only is there the financial component to this case, but there's also the social justice aspect of the case to create change. And in this type of litigation, you create change. So with that being said, I want to provide the opportunity to answer any questions you all may have regarding this case.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Chinoff. That's really helpful background. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Sam, go ahead, please, and then we'll follow with Adam.
Mr. Chinoff, can you explain then what the lawsuit that the Minnesota AG has brought forth to Jewel, and how is that different than from this class action lawsuit?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are pretty much every attorney general across the country is either investigating this issue or has filed their own case against it, and that case is actually pending in your state court, claiming violations of your own state laws. But in that case, there's no the remedies they're seeking. There's no guarantee of a trickle down effect of that you will receive anything out of those lawsuits. So what we're doing is very targeted, and it's specifically for these districts to make sure that whatever happens in the AG's case, whether that's providing funding for counties, cities, as we've seen with the opioids and tobacco, this case is targeted to provide you the specific needs of your district, because since you will have your own lawsuit, we are at the table. We get to say what your needs are financially, and that is the only way your case will go away, and that is either through a settlement or through trial.
Does that answer your question, Sam?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite member Adam Seidel. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I have a couple questions for William, and then I have a question for Ann or Sandy as well. So can you? I want to kind of get an understanding, I guess, of the the damages or the scope that we're talking about here in terms of total settlement. What is the what are the plaintiffs looking for in terms of requested damages amount, and is this specific to some of the specific programs, or I think of like the tobacco, the advertising campaigns and things, right? Is it limited to that? Is it larger? Kind of what is the end goal in terms of talking numbers a little bit?
Yeah. So the way we have experts in place who will put a number on specific issues, and so what we're looking at is it's multifaceted. So we look backwards. So we looking at okay, has your district put in vape detectors? If you haven't, that's one factor to look at. Then we look at staff time. How much has your staff been dealing with this issue? Because then because I have districts who they're dealing with this on a weekly basis. That 70 to 80% of their discipline is vaping related. And then we have economists who say, well, this is how much money in public funds has been spent to date dealing with this issue if we make an estimate based on this sort of timing. So that's the past harm that you've suffered. And then any other money you've spent to deal with vaping education, those types, anything vaping related. Then we look forward, because under a theory of what's called public nuisance, we have a right to seek damages to remedy this nuisance, which is this vaping epidemic. So, we'll look at vape detectors. Vape detectors, a majority of districts have not, even though they're useful, a majority of districts have not done vape detectors because they're cost prohibitive to come out of your general fund. They end up costing around $3,000 to $5,000 a bathroom. So if you can only imagine how many bathrooms a district has and multiply that by $3,000 to $5,000, that's one facet of this case. Then we look at, and that's why this is an individual case, is we look at what your need is for staffing, for supervision, what your need is for counselors for supervision, and then we find out how much those salaries would be, and then multiply that by 5 to 10 years as the way we're remedying this issue. Then we have experts in place who will tell us how much it would cost to put on educational programs by professionals on the harms of vaping. So when you add all those numbers together, that is what your damages would be. Obviously there's going to be specific issues of student population. What's your student population? But even a small school district who has a small student population, they might have a huge vaping problem. So even though you may be a small school district, that fact alone doesn't make your case a small case. But the way we've looked at it is, I can tell you without going into greater detail, is that this is at a minimum a six-figure case, and it goes up from there.
Let me ask these two questions because I'm going to skip one of the other ones I wanted to ask just in this sake of time. What is your firm's take percentage on this? I guess I don't know the exact terminology.
Oh yeah. So what, as I said, is the contingency fee says that it's 20%, but then after, I believe it's after 6 months, it increases to 25%. Because just this case has been going on already for a year and a half, and we are getting closer to that date. So, but the max percentage will be 25%. But what I can also tell you is that when we do get to the point of if there are mediations and settlements, before, what we always ask for is there to be a set aside for our fees, so that your district would then get 100% of the recovery. But if there is no set aside created by the defendants, because that does happen times when there are public entities, then our max fee would be 25% of that recovery. That's how it works.
How many other plaintiffs from the state of Minnesota are there?
At this time, 0.
Okay. And then Sandy or maybe Ann, this would be a question for you. I'm not sure, but you talked about some of the vape detectors and things like that. Could you describe at a very quick high level sort of what kind of things like that our district has been exposed to and things like that, and sort of and what brought you to bring this forward to us, obviously to be the first in the state and be upfront on this? It's sort of a broad question, so.
Go ahead, Ann.
Let me see if I have an echo. Oh, I don't. Oh, I still do. Sorry.
It's not too bad.
Okay. We do not have nicotine detectors currently. We do have an education program, anti-vaping. And the reason I brought this to you is because Mr. Chinoff reached out and offered us the opportunity to be part of this case. I looked over the contingency fee agreement and saw no downsides for the district joining, just the upsides of possible recovery. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Are there any additional questions or comments? Oh, I have an echo too, don't I? I don't know why. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
It just probably means, Madam Chair, that somebody's not on mute, who's not using headphones, most likely.
That's a possibility. Well, we're going to move forward. Michelle, you have a raised hand. Go ahead with your question or comment, please.
Yes, just very quickly. Can you give us an idea of how bad a problem our district has with the vaping?
Ann, do you want to try?
Sure. I spoke with the principals about this, and they indicated that among ALC or academy students, the use of vaping devices is very high.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments, or discussion before we move forward for action? Sam, go ahead, please.
And when you say high, what percentage are we talking about?
They didn't have percentages for me. They just knew that it was frequently brought up as a problem.
Is it more than the straight cigarettes, or?
Yes, they indicated it was more than regular tobacco cigarettes.
Other questions or comments? Sam.
Sorry, the man was before.
The same hand. Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the joining the Jewel lawsuit.
So moved.
Moved by Sam Sant. Is there a second?
Second, Michelle.
Seconded by Michelle Coons. I invite board members to unmute in preparation for the roll call vote. Crystal, go ahead, please.
Andreessen.
Aye.
Brackey is an I. Casey.
Aye.
Keen.
Yes.
Dallas.
Yes.
Coons.
Aye.
Marty.
Aye.
Mosqueda Jones.
Aye.
Neville.
Aye.
Sant.
Yes.
Seidel.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Chinoff, for your presentation, and Anne, thank you for your work and background in preparation for this.
Thank you all very much for the opportunity to work with you. Appreciate it.
Have a good evening. Okay, next we'll move on to item 6.2, 2021 legislative priorities. Sandy, can I invite you to give a little background?
Of course. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, board members again. This legislative platform should look very familiar if you were on the board last year, because it's essentially the same platform. The words have maybe tweaked a little bit to just give us a little more latitude, because we are not sure exactly how this legislative session is going to play out. I'm not sure that anyone is at this point, but it's certainly starting to heat up a little bit, and that will just continue over the next several weeks. We, as intermediate districts, are already into meeting with legislators and trying to provide or obtain support for these legislative items. The final two, the second and third one, are really just technical kinds of changes in the legislative language that would primarily help our member districts. The first one is extended time revenue, which really means that this language, if it were approved, would allow extended time to be logged for care and treatment programs. And so that is something that we do a lot of, and right now you can't claim extended time revenue for kids in those settings. So we think that would be a very good change, and it would benefit our member districts or any district that has a student in a care and treatment program. And then the Word of the State one as well is a technical change that really has to do with not having any district needing to carry the cost of sending a student to what might be a very high out-of-state mental health program. And in this case, if it were approved, what would happen is the district where the student is being charged would get the money up front rather than wait. So right now they don't lose the money, but for a small district, for example, to carry perhaps a $100,000 or $200,000 bill throughout the budget year is very onerous. So this would help in that regard. The big one, though, of course, is our mental health and trauma work and trying to secure funding for our mental health programming, not just the TTM programs, but as you well know, we have a lot of mental health challenges already, and everything is telling us as we come out of this pandemic that will only increase. So we're exceptionally motivated this year to try to secure more money. If you heard the governor's overview, there is money in there, but we'll see how his budget moves forward. In the meantime, we have been talking extensively with the Wilder Foundation, who is our partner in the TTM work, and we're exploring a variety of different non-legislative funding possibilities, trying to keep the program going. It does not have funding for next year, and budgets are going to be very tight in every school district. So we're trying to cover all the bases, but our biggest hope would be that it would be a legislative type of revenue that we could secure on an ongoing basis. So that's our platform, very similar to last year. And we hope we get to go through the whole legislative session this year and try to secure that funding. So that's our platform for the intermediates this year. happy to answer
Thank
any
you,
questions.
Sandy. Yes, any questions or comments? It is, given that it is very similar to what we've seen before, it also makes sense. It's still a goal. So thank you, Sandy. We appreciate it.
Of course.
Next on the agenda is an update on the District 287 Learning Plan. And Sandy, could you please introduce this item as well?
Yeah, thank you. Well, with many of your districts, I'm sure that you are considering various moves in your learning plan that really is happening quite rapidly now. There still is a lot of confusion about what you can do and what you can't do. That is sometimes causing different districts to do different things, even though they might border right next to each other. In our case, though, we are able to fit under the heading of kids with disabilities or anybody with learning losses or learning challenges. And so that gives us kind of a free lane, if you will, to bring back everybody 5 days a week. That's a big step, and because of that, I consulted the epidemiologist from the Department of Health that's been working with MDE all year on this, and she gave the green light to go ahead. And we know that our kids and our staff are going to be excited to get some degree of normalcy. We do know that the pandemic will continue, so we suspect we'll still have cases as the weeks and months go by, but we're hoping that this move is the best one possible for our students and their families and our member districts. So with that, I've asked Ben McGrath to go through a presentation that will give you more detail about the changes in our learning plan. So Ben.
Thank you, Sandy. Good evening, everybody. Board Chair Neville, members of the board, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you tonight and to share our presentation. Before I get into the presentation of the learning model, I know that there's a resolution coming up later in tonight's agenda to return beginning February 11th school board meetings to a hybrid model. So again, just wanted to add that here. It's coming up later in tonight's board agenda. The things that I'll cover here over the next 10 or 15 minutes include what you see in your screen. Briefly reviewing the state guidance that we've received over the last several weeks. Take a look at what's happening with COVID in our sites for our students and our staff, our current delivery model for our students, and then phases 3 and 4, which include what Sandy was just referencing, returning all of our students back to in-person learning. We'll make sure that we answer any questions to the best of our ability. I'll, of course, ask my colleagues to join me in helping to answer those questions. Just in terms of bringing everybody up to speed and on the same page with the governors and the state direction that we've been providing, that first bullet is what you just heard from Sandy, that we've been directed to prioritize in-person learning for students who are vulnerable. And of course, in Intermediate District 287, that's all of our students. All of our students are vulnerable to fall behind academically. They're vulnerable for their mental health and social emotional well-being. So when we hear that we should prioritize in-person learning for students who are vulnerable, we hear prioritize in-person learning for all of our students. The governor's also made it a point that we should prioritize in-person learning for kindergarten through 5th grade, and that we should return those students back to in-person learning every day as soon as we can safely do so. The governor and the state have also directed us to use upgraded personal protective equipment, PPE, the surgical masks and face shields that our school staff are now using on a regular basis. And saliva testing on site in our schools and within our programs. A little bit closer to home, just looking at case rates here around the metro and across the state. I think everybody's been watching these as well, and the case rates have continued to decline. again, both locally and across our state. We're well aware that there are variants from various parts of the world that we have to keep an eye out for. And we know that's a concern for some of our educators, that a variant may be coming closer to Minnesota, or one that's already here starting to spread more. And we do understand that's a concern, and we'll make sure that we're watching our case rates both within our district, around the metro, and across the state for that new variant to have an impact on the case rates. Thanks to the goodwill of our staff members and great leadership by people like Jacob Horsch and Chad Maxa, that we have saliva testing at all of our sites, that we have biweekly testing that many of our educators are signing up for on a regular basis, and they're staffed all day long to make sure that our staff can get a saliva test and that they can be proactive in catching any of those cases where they're maybe not showing symptoms. And then, as again, everybody's, I think, well aware that we're beginning to vaccinate our educators. And so I wanted to talk about that just for 1 minute. We're fortunate in our district in 287 to have two different opportunities, two pathways that our staff are accessing vaccines. The first is through Hennepin County, and they've agreed to provide vaccination for all of our student-facing staff, our local 2209 staff. And they would do so in conjunction with the students' return. So if staff members are working with students who are returning first, they would have the first opportunity for those vaccines. If their students are not yet returning, then they would wait closer to that time when their students are returning. The other opportunity that, again, has been really public is through the state of Minnesota. That's the mass vaccination in St. Paul of 15,000 vaccines that were just for educators. We were able to invite a couple hundred of our staff members to sign up to be part of that lottery. And we know that some of them were able to get one of those appointments to be able to get vaccinated through that state of Minnesota program. We don't have an exact number at this point, at least, about how many of our staff have accessed a vaccine. But our hope is that by the end of next week, that more than 300 of our staff will be at least offered their first vaccine. You've seen this slide before, and I just wanted to provide a really quick update on the cases that we've seen in our district. This is updated as of yesterday. I won't read through the whole slide here. You can read through it yourself, and certainly we can share this presentation. But the top two bullets, that we've had a total of 66 cases in our district. This is students and staff, but 34 of those 66 didn't have an impact on our buildings, which means that those were students or staff members who were learning or working entirely remotely. And that over the last 10 days, we've had 3 cases within our district, again, students or staff. In terms of our learning model, our current learning model is what we call phase 1. And that as of January 19th, all of our kindergarten through 3rd grade students, they've had the opportunity to access everyday in-person learning. And beginning on February 2nd, we will begin phase 2, that's next Tuesday, and welcome all of our 4th and 5th grade students back to everyday in-person learning. Just a quick note that about 56% of our students and families have chosen that in-person learning option. The remaining 44%, those are students that are staying in a distance or connected learning model. We do think that number will change as we bring more students back to an everyday in-person learning model. We can see that some families perhaps will send their students back because it provides greater structure for their student and for their family. And they feel that it's more safe if we're offering in-person learning. But we would also understand that some families may view there to be more exposure, and they may decide to keep their student at home. So we'll keep an eye on that as well and monitor just exactly how many of our students and families are choosing that in-person learning model as we go forward. In terms of our planned model, what's coming next, phase 3 includes our 6th grade through 8th grade, plus our transition students. We're going to welcome them back and provide the opportunity for in-person learning starting February 16th. And the rest of our students, grades 9 through 12, they'll begin the opportunity for in-person learning every day, March 2nd. Now, we know it's important that our educators have an opportunity to be prepared for those students to come back every day. And so you see the professional development days associated with those dates for when those phases are returning. There are 2 other professional development days that are happening. One is tomorrow, and the other is on February 26th. And that will provide our educators, our teachers, teaching teams, educational assistants, enough time to be able to prepare for their students every day in person. There's a really great question at our last board meeting about why this particular process, and there's likely some other questions out there as well. And so I just wanted to take a minute and talk about that here. We definitely understand that if there's a perspective of that you have so many students in special education, so shouldn't we be more individualized in this approach? And while I think that's a great question, again, just want to explain some of our rationale. One of them is just efficiency at scale, that our district does have over 1,000 students in our district. And so being able to put together a model for bringing all of those students back in a relatively short period of time, we had to have some way to organize this and so that we could do that at scale. And of those, about approximately 1,000 students, about half of those are in special education. And of those students in special education, the vast majority of them are in federal setting 4 programs. That we have some students in special education setting 1 and 2 accessing our ALC programs. But again, the vast majority of our students are in federal setting 4 programs. And that means that they have the most exceptional needs out of any student who's accessing public education. And that while some of them may have progressed a little bit more than others in distance learning, that they all have really great and significant needs, and that we felt it was important to try to get all of them back as efficiently as we possibly can. We've also followed the pattern based on the guidance from the governor and state officials on returning earlier grades first, at K through 3 and then 4th through 5th grade. In support of our rationale for phases 3 and 4 is simply moving forward for the most part, with transition being the exception, moving forward with that grade level, youngest students to oldest students. And lastly, this model allows our teaching teams to work collaboratively across buildings and across the district when they're returning at roughly the similar time as their peers, when teachers and educators are, they can team together to plan for that return more effectively. Just in terms of collaboration, that we've continued to engage our cross-district planning team, a team that we've had in place now for the better part of 7 months. As part of this process, Sandy mentioned that she worked with MDH epidemiologists who approved of this plan. We've been working alongside our local 229 leadership and making sure that they understood the plan, we're on board with the plan, and we answered any questions that they might have. And then lastly, our principals have been really, really important in this process for their input about how this is going to work and what this would look like. They were really important, so that extended incident command team with our principals was also key. I'm going to close here and then again ask my colleagues to join me in answering any questions that we can. I'm going to borrow the words from Brené Brown, the author and leadership guru. And she says that daring leadership is not being a knower and being right. Rather, it's being a learner and getting it right. Now, we're going to work really hard to get these phases right and to get this return of our students back to in-person learning right. I can tell you that we've been a learner every step of the way on COVID, on keeping our students safe, on keeping our staff safe, and finding the right balance between that safety and ensuring our students have the opportunity to be able to learn and grow and develop in the way that we need to offer them. So with that, I will close my presentation and stop presenting and ask if there's any questions.
Thank you, Ben, and please extend our gratitude to your team, because we know that this is a district of learners, and this has certainly been an opportunity for all of us to practice skill sets of adaptation and innovation and learning to get it right. So thank you. I think you've certainly demonstrated that. I would invite questions or comments. Michelle Coons, we'll begin with you.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Benjamin, for your great presentation, as always. I've been a little perturbed by things I've heard about people who don't trust the vaccination, who won't get vaccinated. I always thought for a long time that children who attend public schools had to be in line with their vaccinations. Well, apparently that's not the case. So do we have any educational opportunities to explain why it's so important for everyone, or as close as we can, to get vaccinated without drawing attention to them and possibly, not retaliating, but giving people a hard time, like, oh, you didn't take the vaccination kind of things, So I'm just wondering if that's even at this point of discussion or not,
I'll begin an answer and certainly invite my colleagues to join in. It's a great question, and one that's probably going to be asked more and more in the coming days and weeks. There are some very legitimate reasons, obviously, why someone might not choose to get the vaccine. And in our case, it probably revolves around those with certain health conditions that maybe are prohibited from or discouraged. But also there's a racial equity, historical component to this as well. And we are getting staff who are concerned. Trust is low in our country about what our government does, what our public health does, and that's resulted in historical things that have been very significant in the minds of some of our staff, and rightly so. So maybe what I'll do is just invite Radius. Do you want to add anything to that, Radius?
No, I really wouldn't want to add anything. I think so much of what you have spoken about is very true. I mean, we can think about so much of the racial trauma that our African American and our indigenous communities have undergone. So there's a fear of taking the vaccine on their part. So, but the beauty is that we have people like our vice president who is on camera, and she's taking the vaccine. So that says something to many of us as we're watching to see, who goes first and who's going to take the vaccine. So there's a lot of people that are watching right now, and that fear factor is still there for many of our BIPOC members of the community nationally.
And I would just say, we hope, or we think, that as time goes on, we might see more people just watching now and deciding later after they've seen others and had some time pass, so they can see the impact.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? I'm not seeing any. I hope I'm not missing anybody.
There are a couple, Regina. Shannon's hand is raised, and I raised my hand too.
Oh, thank you. So they're not.
I'll have Shannon go first.
Thank you. Go ahead, Shannon. For some reason, I'm not seeing the raised hand, so thank you. But Shannon, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a clarifying question. Since I am new to the board, I wanted to verify that the 2209 leadership, is that your union?
Yes. That's our teachers and EA, or licensed and educational assistants are part of that membership.
Okay, great. And then that leads into what staff input there is. Again, I'm new, so I'm not sure how you've been working with staff and talking with them about plans. So just a little clarification and some additional information about that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. Ben, do you want to take that one?
Sure, be happy to. In terms of collaborating with our staff members, we established a cross-district with a pretty diverse by role team of educators. There's about 25 people on that cross-district planning team, including multiple members from Local 229, our teachers and educational assistants. So one way that we've engaged them is with that cross-district planning team that meets every Tuesday, and that we've met every Tuesday again for the last 7 months or so. The other way is that we do this is through our union leadership meetings. So our Human Resources Director, Michelle Axel, does a fantastic job and meets with the leadership team every week. And we'll talk about things like our learning models to make sure that they're engaged, that they know that what we're proposing and what we're planning, answer questions, work alongside them throughout the process. So those are the two primary ways that we've been engaging them over the last, almost a year.
And I would just maybe add that our nurses have been very significant in this whole COVID time, and they work pretty closely with Jake, who's our health and safety leader, and that's been a key piece of keeping some of the other decision-making or tasks close to the building level.
Great, thank you.
Crystal, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Ben, first, thanks for sharing the rationale around the process. It's helpful to hear, I think, for us on the board and others who are watching and listening as well to have that insight. I have two questions. One is actually more of a state context, so I'm not sure who's best positioned to answer it, but how is the state defining that category of students who are most at risk and so therefore can be in person already? And what prompted that was seeing that, roughly half of our students have the special education designation, but, you were saying earlier, all of our students are vulnerable and at various levels of risk. So I'm just curious what the state's definition is and how we meet that. And then the second question is just around the ongoing connected learning programs that we will be providing for the rest of the year, and how we are going to continue to approach staffing for that in light of the staff that is needed given the percentage of families that are choosing that option, and our staff accommodation process for staff who are not able to be in person even as more and more kids are coming back.
Thanks, Crystal. Those are good questions, and I'll try to take a couple of them and also, again, invite others to chime in. So in terms of the definition, I can't recall the specific language, but it certainly included, obviously, those with special education needs who are on an IEP, but there's also a category that I want to say it was others with learning needs. It was very vast. What that continuum was for kids who maybe were not at grade level or above. And so that really includes a lot of our population. I think, now I'm trying to remember your other questions, Crystal. I knew this would happen. I should have written them down.
It's okay. I never know if it's better to give you them both or to do one and then come back to me. The other question was just about, that we'll be offering connected learning for the rest of the year. It's hard to predict exactly how many families are opting in. So how we are approaching the staffing decisions for that and ensuring that we have the right staff levels for connected learning and our in-person programs. And then I think the other thing I asked was just staff accommodations generally, and if there are things we are adjusting as more and more staff are being asked to come back in person to ensure that we really are like thoughtfully and holistically considering requests from staff who do not feel able to come back into buildings yet.
Okay, got it. I think I'll invite Ben to respond to the staffing one, and Anne and or Michelle, if you want to be thinking about the answer to the accommodations question, please. Go ahead, Ben.
And I might ask Elizabeth to help out here as well in terms of the staffing question. That first of all, I think that our staff have been tremendous, and they've been flexible, and they've really understood the ask and the need to try to juggle multiple things at once. The teaching in the classroom in person while simultaneously teaching to students who are at home. That's been a huge challenge, not just in District 287, but in districts everywhere across the country, across the world. And they've really done a fantastic job with that. So some of this is in terms of staffing, it will still look similar to that. As I mentioned earlier, that we right now have 43-44% of our students and families who are choosing to stay in a distance model. And so some of our staff members certainly will be teaching to students who are in both locations, both in person and at home. And we do understand that's been a challenge, that we've been working to support them in the professional development, those full days that we've had, and through an ongoing process as well. But in terms of staffing, that we're going to ask all of our staff members who can come back into our buildings and serve our students in person to the best of all of our ability. Elizabeth, anything that you want to add to that?
Just that, thank you, Ben, you did actually quite a nice job of capturing that. And yes, our staff have been fantastic in pivoting and adjusting and managing so many different variables. We have, it's a little bit interesting because we can look across and see in groups of students, for example, in our academies, our alternative learning, we have high percentage of students accessing more the distance or connected learning, but with maybe a check-in by appointment with a teacher, either coming in or directly. And so in those cases, and those with the learning needs of those students, we've been able to continue with synchronous, and will continue with some synchronous instruction and different grouping based on the specific content area offered. We're also spending time looking at where we have a concentration of students still electing to be connected and maybe shuffling the instructional duties so that we're matching that up and alleviating some of that back and forth between a virtual instructional environment and in-person instruction for some of our teachers working particularly in the setting 4. So it's kind of a combination. It's been, we opened it up and developed a process where our leaders are working with the teams within programs to specifically address that. And with this phased-in model of giving us a couple weeks in between these large the bands of grade level has allowed for some of that planning to happen and look forward as we're talking with families and getting clarity around who plans to return to the 5 days in person or not. So it's a combination. It's my observation is folks are really collaborating and teaming around problem solving that. And I'll let Ann Becker talk a little bit about the accommodations, but you know, we look at the needs of the students and where students are, and then look at what our needs are for staffing that as well.
Elizabeth did a nice job of summarizing our accommodations process in the sense that we we were able to offer 100 plus accommodations in the very first part of the year when we were in connected learning primarily. We granted those accommodations for a certain period of time, after which we had informed folks that we would be looking at those accommodations and determining whether they could be continued if we were to change learning models, which of course we are. So we've been, Michelle Axel and her team have been meeting with principals about each accommodation for each staff person and determining whether that accommodation can be continued without undue hardship. And that process has taken place over the last several weeks.
Thank you, Anne. Crystal, does that information address the questions you have?
It does. I think, as we know more, this is just something that I think would be helpful to continue to get updates on in terms of, the staff who are focusing on connected, the staff who are in person, overlap across the two, and then also, what percentage of staff requested accommodations that are not being met. And just, I think continuing to have a window into that feels important to me.
Yeah, of course. We can do that as we go because it will be a changing situation.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Additional questions or comments about the learning plan? I know this is an active conversation in each of our home districts as well. So it's something everyone is experiencing with different variables, but all with some of the same needs for flexibility and adaptation. So thank you all. We're going to move forward with item 8, our business services and labor relations report. First is the financial report. And so I'd like to welcome May Hawkins with our approval for introducing the monthly financial report, which is an action item for approval. Welcome, May.
Good evening, school board chair and board members. As this is our first financial presentation of this calendar year, I'm going to start first with some 287 school board background information so that our newest board members can get a handle on how we do financial reporting here at 287. So the first note is that our fiscal year runs from July 1 through June 30th, and that each month the board receives a financial report. That report contains a year-to-date comparison of actual revenues to budget with a graph, a year-to-date comparison of actual expenditures to budget with a graph, a cash report that shows the claims, the payroll, receipts, and investments, a cash and investment positions information page with a graph, the electronic transfers, both in and out, ADM graphs comparing actual ADMs to plan for each type of instructional program, and a monthly donations report. In addition to those, the monthly check register is sent to the board treasurer prior to the school board meeting. So these reports, this might be a little different than your board, are presented to the board in 2 different methods. So for each quarter, the monthly end report is given in person by myself at the school board meeting. So that would be at the end of each quarter, which is September, December, March, and June. All the other months' reports are included on the consent agenda for the board's approval. If at any time there is something unexpected that occurs there in a month, that will be moved from the consent agenda to a formal report once again. So we are now at the end of our second quarter. This is the December monthly report. And revenues were at 46.2% of budget, which is between the prior 2 years' percentages. Expenditures were at 35.8% of budget, which is lower than the prior 2 years' percentages. Investments totaled $17,943,620, which include earned interest of $2,309.81. Cash is above the prior 2 years' December balances. The ALC ADMs were at 274.89, which is 60 ADMs below planning and 53.5 ADMs below prior year. The NSO ADMs totaled 309.21. Note that for some areas of NSO, ADMs are reported at the end of a quarter or a semester. That number is 204.46 ADMs lower than December 2019. Career and Tech Pathways ADMs were 7604, which is 26 below budget and 18 lower than last year. Special Ed ADMs were at 477.48, which is 9252 ADMs under budget and 4585 below prior year. And the Care and Treatment ADMs totaled 135.28, which is 82 ADMs under budget and 13 below last year. Donations for the month of December included educational supplies, staff wellness incentives, a vehicle to the Auto Tech program, 2 walker gait trainers, and 247 cases of hand sanitizer and 120 cases of masks. Are there any questions before the board takes action on the December report?
Thank you, May, and I appreciate the overview of our financial reports. Even though I've had the opportunity to hear them for a while, the brush-up is always appreciated, so thank you. Any questions or comments about the financial report? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the financial report as presented?
I'll move it.
Moved by Sam Sant. Is there a second?
Andrea Keene.
Seconded by Andrea Keene. And Crystal, would you please call the roll for approval of the monthly financial report?
Andreessen.
Aye.
Brackey is an aye. Casey.
Aye.
Keene.
Yes.
Dallas.
Yes.
Kuntz.
Aye. Sorry.
Hardy.
Aye.
Mosqueda Jones.
Aye.
Neville.
Aye.
Sant.
Yes.
Seidel.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. And thank you, May, and our appreciation to your team as well. Next on the agenda is item 9, board business report. First up is policy review and revision. We'll have a review and this evening asked to approve the Title IX policy revisions. This has been shared with the board before, and I'd like to invite Ann Becker to give us an overview of the revisions and to take any questions or comments board members may have. Ann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to give a little background for the new board members, the new Title IX regulations took effect beginning August 14th of last year, and districts had to have a policy in place that complied with those regulations by that date. So we had an emergency policy adoption on July 30th in order to be in compliance with that date, and that meant we only had one reading of the policy. Since then, the policy has been significantly revised. We had a first read in December, and now we're at the second read. There are only very minor changes between the first and second read in this case. I added the word guardian to the policy on page 10 so that it would read parents/guardians. And also on page 18, I added the word guardians, plural, so it would read parents/guardians. So that throughout the policy, it refers to parents and guardians. Those are the only changes since the first read, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ann. Any questions or comments for Ann before we request a motion for approval? Andrea, go ahead, please.
Thanks. Ann, thanks for all your hard work on this policy. My understanding is that it had to be changed because of guidance from the previous administration. Now that you've done all this hard work and put in all this time, I'm just curious, what's the likelihood that it's going to come back with changes again soon? Or maybe
I don't know, but I think it's very likely.
Okay.
I would be surprised if we don't see changes.
So we'll address that as it comes forward. But thank you for the question, Andrea. Other questions or comments? Sam, go ahead, please.
And being that we can all anticipate changes, from the new administration, is it still pertinent that we still revise our policy then? Or can we wait?
We should revise it so that we're in compliance with the regulations that exist right now.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Thank you, Anne, for all of your work. And I would now ask for a motion to approve the amendments to the Title IX policy.
So moved. This is Ann Casey.
Moved by Ann Casey. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Andrea Keene.
Seconded by Andrea Keene. Crystal, would you please call the roll for approval of the amendments to the Title IX policy?
Andreessen.
Aye.
Brackey is an aye. Casey.
Aye.
Keene.
Yes.
Dallas.
Yes.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Marty.
Aye.
Mosqueda Jones.
Aye.
Neville.
Aye.
Sant.
Yes.
Seidel.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Next up, we'll move on to board reports, beginning with the chair report. And I'd like to give an update on and a recommendation for an MSBA workshop. At our last meeting, we talked about the opportunity for a workshop for board members. MSBA offers a workshop on superintendent transitions that is titled Hiring the Right Superintendent. The workshop is presented by MSBA currently in a virtual format, and they ask that if we move forward with this, that we allow about 2 hours for the presentation. The cost of this workshop is $975, which includes all of the time and materials. For the virtual presentation, MSBA does send paper materials out in advance so that board members have those available as a reference. So there is the date available by MSBA on February 25th. This will be a workshop following our general board meeting on that date. Are there any questions or comments about confirming this workshop? Excellent. Good. Thank you all. I appreciate your willingness to move forward. I think that the opportunity to have some background and in particular, updated background is really helpful before we engage in the transition process. Andrea, I see that you do have a raised hand. Thanks. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I wasn't sure of my hand. Is it raised right now or is it lowered?
It is now. It was on for a little bit. It went off and it's back. But go ahead.
I was just confused. No, I was just confused. I have nothing.
Oh,
now
okay. Okay. Excellent. Then we're good. So if there are no concerns or questions, I will go ahead and confirm that workshop with MSBA. Sandy,
I
a
just
question or a comment?
Just a comment that Shannon has her hand up. I'm not sure if she has a question or not. There. Okay.
Thank you. I've just been watching the hand icon there. I think it was left from the last one, but thank you for clarifying. Just there. All hands are currently clear. Oh, Ruthie.
Just a quick question. Are we saying the regular board meeting and the workshop on the same evening? So would we start at the same time?
Correct. We would begin with our general meeting at 6:30 and follow with the workshop. And one of the reasons for suggesting February 25th is that it is a somewhat lighter agenda for the general meeting, so that hopefully the total time for the evening comes out to be a good balance.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? We'll move forward, so stay tuned for more information that I will confirm with MSBA, and we'll continue to make plans. So thank you very much. Next, information about a first draft for the superintendent's contract. As we have shared in our previous board meeting, Superintendent Sandy Lewandowski will be retiring June 30th of 2022. So we do need to renew her contract for the 21-22 school year. So we're just a little early in that process, but a draft of that contract has been shared, and it'll be brought before the board for approval February 11th. And Ruthie, I do see your hand up. Is that up from the last question, or do you have a new question or comment?
Yes, that was from previous.
Okay, but regarding the superintendent contract, are there any questions or comments? Okay, thank you all. This will come before us again. This is just information for right now, and it'll be brought to us again on February 11th for approval, so thank you. And next up is our resolution to return to a hybrid board meeting format. So Ben McGrath shared in his slide presentation that this will be coming up later this evening. So at this point, we're going to be considering the resolution. And we've done this a couple times now because this has just been a period of months where we do need to adapt, and sometimes we're completely virtual as we are this evening. And we have gone back into a hybrid board model since quarantine began in March of 2020. And now that our students are starting to come back for more in-person instruction, we'd like to propose that we go back to a hybrid model for the board. The space accommodation doesn't allow that 100% of us can be present in the same room, but it is possible for many of us to be present. So with the resolution, I'm wondering if, Sandy, if you have any comments about things that may be different this time from the last time we came back in hybrid. I'm not aware of them. My understanding is that the board will be asked to sign up if you wish to be in person. I will be in person at each of those meetings as board chair, but we will have an invitation for board members to sign up to join as the space allotment provides. We'll continue to have all of our votes taken by roll call since we will still be in a hybrid format. But Sandy, is there anything else that we should be aware of?
I would just add that Juanine will keep track where you will be during the meeting, either in the boardroom or virtual. As Regina said, we can't get everybody in, but we'll have a number that we can reach for capacity, and it can be any of you, but she'll keep track of who's going to view the meeting where.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments before we take action on the resolution? Anne, go ahead, please.
I think my question is, what's the advantage of holding a hybrid meeting? Given that we can't all be in person, so we'll always have to have someone. Was it for those of you especially who were in person at one time, did you find it valuable to be in person?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to start with that, but I would invite other responses to this as well. Part of it is just keeping in step with the action of our district with our education model. I really think that is the lead, as long as we have teachers, and we have had teachers in person with many of our students all along. So I think it's important to acknowledge that even though our board has been 100% virtual at times, we have still had educators in person with many of our students. So part of this is wanting to continue to maintain some of that alignment. Part of it also creates an opportunity for audience members to be present if they wish to address the board. That would need to follow the same protocol in terms of keeping the correct number of people that the space can allow. But depending on how many people sign up for hybrid, it does provide for that opportunity for someone to address the board in person. So that's a couple of comments toward that question. But just on that specific question, are there any other pieces of information that people could add? Sam, go ahead, please.
I will, since I also attended physically for the few months that we're able to, and I think there's an intrinsic value that you lose from being virtually, just like our students are with learning. We lose the same thing I know in Robbinsdale, it's a tremendous amount of nonverbal communication that we've missed out on, or just how we communicate in person versus through a screen. And I think that's a huge advantage when we meet together, whether that be a hybrid or not. And I agree with what you said, Regina, too, that a lot of this has to do with optics. If we're requiring our staff and students to come back, we should as well. We're speaking about this at Robbinsdale also, to start moving our meetings as a hybrid model. One thing that we've learned from this too, though, is that we could still offer a link through Zoom to the public, to if they would like to, join our meeting or come for public comments, because it's easier access and we get a larger participation rate that way. That's just something we've learned going forward, through this pandemic. But again, I would support that we be together in person.
Thank you, Sam. And does that help address some of the questions you had?
Yeah, that answers the question. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions or comments on the hybrid board model? And Sam, Anne, and Ruthie, each of you do have hands raised. I think that you can probably, I don't have the ability to clear the hands, but just wanted to note that if you don't have any new questions or comments, to clear them. Thank you. So at this point, I would ask for a motion to approve the resolution that the board return to a hybrid board meeting model and to waive the reading of the resolution. Is there a motion?
So move, Andrea Keene.
Second.
Moved by Andrea Keene, seconded by Sam Sant. And I invite everyone to unmute in preparation for the roll call vote. Crystal, would you please call the roll?
Andreessen.
Aye.
Brackey is an aye. Casey.
Aye.
Keene.
Yes.
Dallas.
Yes.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Marty.
Aye.
Mosqueda Jones.
Aye.
Neville.
Aye.
Sant.
Yes.
Seidel.
Yes.
Thank you all. Motion carries. So please stay tuned for updates from Juanine regarding signing up for the meetings. We'll begin our hybrid model again at our February 11th meeting. Next, we have our AMSD report. Who will be giving the update from AMSD this evening?
Madam Chair, we do not have an update from AMSD, but I think we skipped an agenda item, superintendent evaluation options.
Thank you so much. We certainly did. That is where my printed copy put that right on top of the blue border. So thank you. I'm going to go return then to item 9.2.3, superintendent evaluation options. And just some background, especially for our new board members, board policy regarding superintendent evaluation includes the opportunity for the board to consider a mid-year evaluation of the superintendent. It is our practice and our policy to, at minimum, have an annual review and evaluation, which is what we do. In the last several years, we have waived the opportunity for the mid-year evaluation. But I just presented this evening because this is a part of the policy language, and I'd like to ask if there are any concerns about waiving the mid-year evaluation. And I'm seeing basically heads shaking no, meaning to waive that. People are in agreement with waiving it. And this is just an informational item. It does not require a vote. And again, this has been our practice. It is my recommendation that we continue to waive the mid-year evaluation. We will still have a year-end evaluation. And Andrea, thank you for putting that out. I appreciate being able to go back and pick that one up. So no AMSD report. Then we'll move forward just to district news. I just want to call attention to the calendar that we do have an opportunity for a virtual breakfast with Local 2209. A little background for new members. Local 2209 is our teachers union, which includes our educational assistants. During non-pandemic times, we have the opportunity to meet for breakfast, and it's just great to meet over food and have a great conversation, and that has been consistent. The meetings are currently virtual. The next one is Tuesday, February 23rd at 7 o'clock a.m. So if you would like to attend that virtual opportunity, please let Juanine MGD know, and you'll be sent a link for that opportunity on February 23rd. We'll continue with Once Around the Table. Is there anything that board members would like to share? All right, that's okay. There's plenty going on at home, and we've had a good discussion here. Michelle, is that a yes? Are you waving to share?
Yeah. Saturday at noon, we have Andrea receiving her all-state presentation. I'm not sure what they're doing, but I know to tune in at noon. And I got a certificate for being here 20 years. So,
Michelle, congratulations.
Yes.
Well, thank you all for putting up with me all these years.
There is wisdom and consistency, and
I know,
that helps build a strong board. Thank you.
Yeah, 20 years ago was a very different picture, but I'm very happy to have been here all these years. It's been a wonderful place to be. And I miss you all in person, so.
Likewise, it will be better together. Well, Michelle and Andrea, congratulations to both of you. Thank you for the reminder about the MSBA opportunity at noon.
Thank you.
Other questions or other just items to share from anybody? Okay, Superintendent Lewandowski, I'm just going to invite you to make any closing comments that you would like to share this evening.
I have none this evening. That's a rare thing, I know, but I have none for this evening. Thank you.
Very good. Then at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move. Andrea Keene.
Moved by Andrea Keene. Is there a second?
Michelle.
Seconded by Michelle Coons. Crystal, would you please call the roll for adjournment?
Andreessen.
Aye.
Brackey is an aye. Casey.
Aye.
Keene.
Yes.
Dallas.
Yes.
Coons.
Aye.
Marty.
Aye.
Mosqueda Jones.
Aye.
Neville.
Aye.
Sant.
Yes.
Seidel.
Yes.
Thank you all. Motion carries. And with that, we are adjourned. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.